You are lying in bed at 1 a.m. and out of nowhere, a memory surfaces. Not a big one, not a trauma, just a comment someone made to you 3 years ago at a birthday dinner in a tone that felt slightly off. You remember exactly what they were wearing. You remember the song playing in the background. You remember the exact words, word for word, like a transcript burned into your skull. Everyone else at that dinner has completely forgotten it ever happened. But you could replay it right now, like a video file that never got deleted. Most people think having a sharp memory is a gift, something to brag about at trivia night. But for a certain kind of person, remembering everything isn't a superpower. It's a curse that quietly steals their peace, one perfectly preserved memory at a time. Today, we're going to break down the psychology of people who remember everything, why their minds refuse to let anything go, and how they can finally learn to live with a memory that never sleeps.
Let's start with the obvious question. Why do some people forget an entire conversation 5 minutes after it happens, while others can recall the exact sentence someone said to them in 3rd grade? Neuroscience tells us that memory isn't a single system. It's closer to a filing cabinet with different drawers, and some people's drawers simply don't close. Researchers studying a rare condition called highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, found that certain individuals can recall almost every day of their life in vivid detail, down to the weather and what they ate for lunch. But you don't need a rare neurological condition to feel trapped by memory. Most people who remember everything fall into a much more common and much more painful category. Their memory isn't necessarily more accurate, it's more emotionally sticky.
Here's what that actually looks like in daily life. A coworker jokes about your outfit in a meeting. Everyone laughs, moves on, forgets it within the hour. You are still thinking about it at dinner. You replay the exact tone of their voice. You analyze whether it was really a joke or a subtle insult. 3 weeks later, you still remember it with the same clarity as the moment it happened, while the actual joke teller has completely forgotten they ever said it. This isn't about intelligence, and it isn't about being overly sensitive in the way people dismiss it. Psychologists call the underlying mechanism the mood-congruent memory effect, combined with something called rumination. Emotionally charged moments get flagged by the amygdala as important, and the brain essentially stamps them with a "do not delete" label. The stronger the emotion attached to a memory, whether it's embarrassment, hurt, or injustice, the more permanently it gets etched into long-term storage. For most people, that filter fades with time. For people who remember everything, that filter barely fades at all.
Here's the part that most people get completely wrong about this trait. They assume the person remembering everything is simply choosing to hold on to grudges, being petty, or living in the past. But that's not what's happening biologically. What's actually happening is that their hippocampus, the brain's memory indexing center, works in overdrive when paired with a highly active default mode network, the same system responsible for self-reflection and inner narrative. Together, these two systems create something almost like an internal archivist that never clocks out. Every conversation, every slight, every kindness, every awkward silence gets cataloged, cross-referenced, and stored with disturbing accuracy. This creates a very specific kind of exhaustion that most people never see from the outside. On the surface, someone who remembers everything often looks calm, composed, maybe even a little detached. But internally, their mind is running a constant archive search. Did that person seem cold to me last week? What did I say back then that might explain why they're acting distant now? Their memory isn't just storing facts. It's storing patterns, timelines, and emotional data points that they cannot help but connect. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Because they remember so precisely, they often become the unofficial fact-checker of every relationship they're in. They remember the promise you made and forgot. They remember the exact date of the argument you swear never happened.
They remember what you said last year that directly contradicts what you're saying now. This makes them incredibly reliable, but it also makes them exhausting to be around for people who live loosely with their own memories, and exhausting to be for themselves.
Take a very real scenario. Someone is dating a partner who occasionally says things carelessly, forgets small commitments, or contradicts themselves. A person with a looser memory might let these things slide, genuinely forgetting the inconsistency within days. But someone who remembers everything cannot do that, even if they want to. Every unmet promise stays filed away, time-stamped, ready for retrieval. They're not trying to build a case against their partner. Their brain simply refuses to let.
Another example. In friend groups, this person often becomes the unintentional historian. Wait, that's not what happened. You actually said this on this exact day. I remember because we were at that restaurant. At first, friends find this impressive. Eventually, it becomes uncomfortable because nobody wants to be reminded that their carelessly spoken words from 2 years ago are still sitting somewhere, fully preserved in someone else's head. And the person doing the remembering isn't trying to catch anyone in a lie. They genuinely cannot access the version of reality where that memory doesn't exist. For them, forgetting isn't a choice you flip on and off. It's a door that simply never closes. The first and most exhausting sign is the involuntary replay loop. This isn't about intentionally thinking back on the past. It's the memory arriving uninvited, usually late at night, usually during quiet moments when the brain has nothing else competing for its attention. They'll be brushing their teeth, and suddenly a conversation from 4 years ago surfaces with total clarity. This happens because rumination and memory consolidation share overlapping neural pathways. When the brain isn't occupied with external tasks, the default mode network activates. And for someone with a hyperactive emotional memory system, that quiet time becomes prime real estate for old memories to resurface and get reanalyzed all over again. Each replay doesn't just recall the memory, it re-strengthens it, making it even more permanent than before. The second sign is a painful contradiction many people who remember everything live with silently. They say, "It's okay," and genuinely mean it in the moment. They're not lying, but their nervous system doesn't actually release the memory just because they've verbally forgiven someone. This creates a strange internal split where they behave warmly towards someone while simultaneously holding a fully detailed record of every time that person hurt them. It's not resentment in the traditional sense. It's more like their mind refuses to let go of the evidence, even after their heart has already moved past it.
The third sign is perhaps the most invisible. Because they remember details so precisely, friends and family start relying on them as the group's shared memory. What was the name of that place we went to? Wait, didn't you say something different about this last year? They become the unofficial keeper of everyone else's history, holding details that even the people involved have forgotten about themselves. This role feels flattering at first, but over time, it becomes a quiet burden. They're not just remembering their own life, they're remembering everyone else's too, and nobody ever asked if they wanted that responsibility.
So what can someone with this kind of memory actually do? The goal isn't to forget on command, because that's not how memory works. The same way you can't force yourself to stop hearing a song once it's stuck in your head. The goal is learning how to change your relationship with what you remember. There are 3 principles that tend to genuinely help. The first principle is separating memory from meaning. Just because you remember something in perfect detail doesn't mean it still holds the same significance today. A memory is a recording, not a verdict. When an old moment resurfaces, you can acknowledge it without immediately reopening the emotional case file attached to it. Practicing this looks like noticing the memory, naming it silently. This is an old memory replaying, not a current threat, and letting it pass without following it down every branch of analysis it offers you. The second principle is closing the loop on purpose. Because their brain struggles to naturally let go, people who remember everything often benefit from actively and consciously deciding when something is finished. This might mean writing the memory down once, fully, and telling yourself, this has now been recorded elsewhere. It doesn't need to keep living in my head. It sounds almost too simple, but externalizing the memory gives the mind permission to stop guarding it internally, because the information now exists somewhere safe, outside of your own thoughts.
The third principle is choosing which memories deserve your context and which ones deserve your silence. Remembering something doesn't obligate you to bring it up. You're allowed to hold a memory privately, know the full truth of a situation, and still choose not to turn it into a confrontation or a correction. Not every accurate memory needs to be spoken out loud. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for the people around you, is to let your memory simply exist as information you carry, not evidence you have to present.
If you're someone who remembers everything, understand this. You are not broken, and you are not simply incapable of letting things go out of stubbornness. Your mind was built to hold on to detail with extraordinary precision, and that precision comes with weight most people around you will never understand. But that same trait that keeps you replaying old conversations at 1 a.m. is the exact trait that makes you deeply loyal, remarkably honest, and someone who genuinely never forgets the people who showed up for you either. The memory that burdens you is the same memory that makes you someone worth trusting.
If this sounds familiar to you, share in the comments the memory that still replays in your mind, even though everyone else has forgotten it. You're not alone in carrying it. This video is intended for general educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional psychological consultation or therapy. If old memories are significantly affecting your daily life or well-being, consider speaking with a licensed mental health professional. If today's video gave you a little more clarity about your own mind, hit like and share it with someone who also can't seem to forget a single thing. I'm Eco. Don't forget to subscribe so we can keep exploring the hidden corners of the mind together. Goodbye, and I'll see you next time.